In the middle of 1967, the Doors were a hot new band with a #1 single. They didn't waste time following up. Many of the lyrics for their second album were taken from Jim Morrison's notebooks. Musically, the band wanted to enhance the sound of their first album. They used echo, Moog synthesizer, backwards piano, harpsichord, and bits of electronic processing. Krieger's guitar lines were increasingly graceful, but they had a sting. Densmore's drumming was always inventive. Success surrounded the band, but the second album's title lived up to the Doors' mysterious image, Strange Days. The Doors opened for Simon & Garfunkel in New York at the end of the summer. The crowd didn't buy Jim's dramatic moves. Some of them even laughed. Jim operated on impulse. At his best, he was captivating. At his worst, he was a clown. After the Simon & Garfunkel show, he knew everybody wasn't going to swoon to his antics. That didn't mean Morrison was going to change for anyone. When the Doors performed Light My Fire on the Ed Sullivan Show, the producer demanded that the line, "Girl, we couldn't get much higher," be removed. It was too blatant a drug reference. In the dressing room, the Doors agreed, but on stage, Jim sang the original line. That was their last Sullivan appearance. On stage and off, Morrison's mischief was becoming obnoxious. Drunk and stoned one night, he tried to rip apart the apartment of Elektra's president. He and Pam began to have heated squabbles, too. Jim visited a psychiatrist, but didn't stick around for many sessions. At the age of 23, he was becoming one of the most influential singers in America. This power expanded his already healthy sense of self-confidence. Jim's singing became more expressive, full of grunts and howls. Ray compared Jim to a shaman who took the audience on a mystical journey.
What do you think the role of a rock shaman is in a time of, say, social turmoil?
I don't think the shaman, from what I've read, is really too interested in defining his role in society. He's just more interested in pursuing his own fantasies.
Morrison said performing for people was like presiding over a crisis situation. He often leapt and fell off the stage. The music and the action became increasingly cathartic. Some writers suggested Jim was possessed. In New Haven, Connecticut, Morrison demonstrated his defiance. Jim was making out with a fan before a show in October of '67 when he was confronted by a policeman. The cop told Jim to clear the room. Jim mouthed off and got a blast of mace in the eyes. The Doors went on anyway. During one song, Jim began telling the audience what had happened backstage and was viciously teasing the police. The cops threw on the house lights and dragged Morrison off the stage. He was charged with breach of peace and immoral exhibition. The FBI opened a file on Jim Morrison. Now known by every rock fan in the world, the Doors began work on their third album, Waiting for the Sun. It was to have a whole side dedicated to Morrison's extended poem, The Celebration of the Lizard. Hopes were high that it would be his masterpiece, but things were unraveling. Pam was urging Jim to quit the Doors and lead a quieter life as a poet. Booze became a steady companion for the singer. Occasionally, his writing was incoherent. The trappings of pop stardom made Jim wonder about his effectiveness as an artist. John Densmore lost patience with the Doors' lack of focus in the studio.
One night in the studio, I said, "That's it, goodbye, F you," to the whole band, and I left. And I came back the next day because I couldn't give up my art. But that was my way of saying, we got to stop this, destruction.
Densmore's actions sent a message to the others. Jim was veering out of control. The band hired a bodyguard to keep him away from whiskey.
Well, show me the way to the next whiskey bar.
Keeping Morrison straight was impossible. The Doors became increasingly frustrated with working on Celebration of the Lizard. The piece didn't hold up. The friction between young protesters and the government over the war in Vietnam was at its zenith. The Doors released the highly theatrical song, The Unknown Soldier. They also produced a promotional film for the track. At the end of it, Morrison mimed being shot dead, a martyr. Some radio stations played the song, but many thought it was too controversial or just too strange to be commercial.
Do you think our political group? The music can't help but reflecting things that are happening around it.
Morrison didn't seem to care about chart success. He made a game out of testing his own physical limits. He jumped out of moving cars. He hung from the ledges of hotels. Morrison could provoke the audience into rushing the stage. Doors concerts began to generate riots. If Jim could not mesmerize the huge crowds as he had club audiences, he would instead drive them into a frenzy.
Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you, let me jump in your game.
The Doors hadn't had a hit song in the year since Light My Fire. They released Hello, I Love You in June of '68. It was their second #1. But its simplicity caused many fans to wonder about the band's direction.
In all honesty, Hello, I Love You was released because we felt it had the best chance on the top 40 charts.
Waiting for the Sun came out a few weeks later and went gold quickly. The only thing saved from Celebration of the Lizard was a 4-minute song called Not to Touch the Earth. It contained the line, I am the Lizard King. I can do anything. Jim's myth continued to grow.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Los Angeles, California, the Doors!
Concert venues began getting bigger, but the Hollywood Bowl and Madison Square Garden didn't supply the kind of intimacy the Doors were used to. And of course, they were expected to play their hits. That kind of formula was at odds with their roots in improvisation. In the early days, the band made up its tunes as it went along. Now they felt a commitment to give the audience what it came for. Morrison began scripting some of his stage falls, a showbiz move. Teeny boppers filled the shows, and Morrison believed they were missing the depth of his lyrics. He was frustrated. One day Jim announced he was quitting. Ray talked him into staying for another 6 months.
You definitely generate an atmosphere or a mood which might be characterized as rebellion, chaos, disorder, and activity that appears to have no meaning.
On stage, Morrison's sexual overtones became more and more graphic. Local police began to monitor the Doors shows for indecent or illegal activity. There was a shoving match in Phoenix as fans rushed the stage after Morrison had taunted the audience. No matter how hot it got, Morrison couldn't resist fueling the fire.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, now touch me, babe. Can't you see that I am not afraid?
For their next single, the Doors added an orchestra. Touch Me had a Las Vegas tinge to it. At the LA Forum, with the orchestra in tow, the band didn't go over. Morrison asked the crowd what they wanted. Light My Fire, they roared. Celebration of the Lizard is what they